So tell me about bike politics in LA and what makes LA a bike-friendly city.
For me personally, the first political act I ever was involved in was around bicycles. My father and my uncle were big cyclists, and growing up, my uncle was one of the activists that wanted to create a veloway, which would have been a bicycle kind of freeway next to where the freeways were. And so I remember spending many weekends with him, licking envelopes, sending out letters, and trying to get people to buy off on, probably looking back on it, wasn't the best idea because nobody wants to cycle behind all the exhaust of a freeway. But certainly got me engaged in the possibility in a city that feels so spread out but can be a great bicycle town because we are horizontal and because we have hills and we have ocean and the best topography probably of any city. But we really have done very little to nurture a bicycle culture and a bicycle infrastructure.
So, good answer. So you have biking in your genes?
I have some biking in my genes, yeah, absolutely. I used to go out with my dad on rides, and I enjoy riding in the city. When I was a student, I've lived in other countries where people are much more aggressive cyclers and where there was a real bicycle rights movement. For instance, I went to graduate school in Oxford, and it was after bicyclists shut down the city center in Oxford that town got serious about closing down some streets to vehicles besides buses, and it was a great way to encourage cycling, and I loved being able to get around that beautiful town just staying on a bicycle, and it was definitely something that I brought back with me when I came back home to LA.
Okay, so now what kinds of things have you been involved with in terms of has there been legislation that's made biking easier in LA?
Yeah, we've been very aggressive in my district. I mean, a council member first and foremost kind of is in charge of his or her district, and in Council District 13, which is the heartland of LA, it's Hollywood, East Hollywood, Little Armenia, Thai Town, Silver Lake, historic Filipino town, Echo Park, Glassell Park, Atwater Village. We've got some of the highest concentration of cyclists and cyclist activists as well. So for me, it's been trying to lay down, first of all, dedicated bike lanes. We were able to do that on Silver Lake Boulevard. We're able to do that in places like Myra Avenue. And also, it's been a dream of mine. I grew up in the Valley and used to love bicycling on the Sepulveda Dam area and the flood basin there to continue that LA River connector to be able to go all the way from the Valley to downtown. So the biggest extension of that bike path was a real high priority. We finally broke ground, and we'll finish up next year that extension that will take us through Atwater Village to the edge of the cornfields and Chinatown.
Wow, that's going to be great.
So, but I also believe there should be comprehensive citywide changes, and I've tried to focus on how we can get there to be a seismic shift in our Department of Transportation, which still sees bicycling as a peripheral issue, accommodate cars first, maybe pedestrians second, a distant second, and then bicycles are usually an afterthought. When in reality, the vehicle code in the state is clear, and the growing numbers of people who are bicycling to get around should make that a mainstream consideration of all of the studies that we do, all the ways we look at our roads, and the way that we plan our city in the future. So everything from sharrows, which we did the first legislation to get those down, and we hope in spring to have the first sharrows in the city to remind people that regular lanes need a bike lane because every lane is a bike lane, or looking at ways to better train our police department and others about the sensitivity towards bicyclists. Those have been a place that I've emphasized as well.
Yeah, a lot of people are talking about that, about training police and educating motorists. What do you think about? Do you know about the? There's a group that's formed in response to the bike plan called the Bike Riders. Well, it's by the Bike Riders Collective.
Yep.
And it's the Bike Plan Working Group.
Yep.
And have you met with them? Have you talked to them? Or
my staff has. I haven't yet personally, but I know a lot of the folks that are part of it. And we've, whether it's been in reaction to accidents that have happened, or whether it's dealing with just trying to change that attitude within the Department of Transportation, they've been really important allies. And I think it's great. The bicycle community is probably the best organized political group in the city after homeowners. In the past, LA politics has really been about articulating what we're against and what we want to kill and the project that we want to downsize or things we don't want to see. And one of the nice and uplifting things about bicycle politics in Los Angeles is that it is a proactive and an optimistic movement. It's trying to reimagine the city in a positive way, saying I'm not just going to turn out to say what I'm against with 300 other people angry and yelling. We're going to actually do the very difficult work of re-engineering the city. And so I think it's great that the collectives come together as the people's voice in this process, or one of the people's voices.
So what else would you like to see in terms of improvements in making city more bike friendly?
I'd like to see a lot of things. I'd like to see, first and foremost, more bike-friendly employer policies. I'd like us, in the city, we won an award from the MTA for putting for the city employees, which is 40,000 people, the first bicycle lockers and showers for use, so that people could actually commute to work. I could commute to work, even though I live just in Echo Park. By the time you get to work and you're sweating, you don't want to put the suit right on and start working. And I think we need to have more to incentivize, maybe even tax credits, other things for employers that do provide bike-friendly environments for their employees. Secondly, I'd like to see us continue to remind and to change our regulations around the existing roads and how bicycles can and should stay on them. That we need to make sure, whether it's in a defensive way, to make sure our police officers know those rules and regulations, or that our drivers, which is I think the most important piece that we could do. We have so many uninformed drivers right now who don't know that the state law is that these are lanes that they have to share. And I'd like to see, the money that we spend on those bus ads and on our public service announcements, really educating people out there, because I think it'll protect our bicyclists, but it'll also encourage a lot of people who don't want to get on a bicycle because they think it's unsafe in the city today, or have seen the stories and have seen accidents, to actually stay away from their car and leave their car at home for even a day or two a week. Change in Los Angeles isn't going to come from turning every driver into a cyclist or a public transit user. It will change with each one of us giving up one of those car trips each week. And if we get an entire city to say, okay, this is the one day a month that we're going to do that, that's how we change things. And it's what I've tried to do with my own office, which is I mandate everybody, once a week needs to carpool, take transit, bicycle, or walk, to come to work. And in doing that, we can begin to change the city.
So you have a really progressive situation over there, huh?
Yeah, great cyclists. Marcel, who's just behind my shoulder. The viewers can't see him, but the listeners can't see him. But he's a handsome man just behind me. He is an avid cyclist. Didn't have a car until recently. Helen Leung, who was my Hollywood deputy, who worked really aggressively on everything from the bicycle facility we're going to have at Hollywood and Western, which is one of the subway stops where people can then leave their bikes and do something like what we've seen in Long Beach, or our new bike rack designs that fit into the urban landscape and get people excited about that. I've been very lucky to be surrounded by cyclists who share my vision in the office too. The bicycle plan has some great things in it. One of which is important to me is, as we get public comment, and I'd be interested in the activist community here in Los Angeles chiming in, is the difference between potential and proposed bike lanes. Potential bike lanes are ones that, about 180 miles worth of lanes that are pretty much ready to go right now. They're existing bike lanes that don't need to be restriped, but they are streets that are bike friendly already. 4th Street, for instance, and places where we don't have anything that indicates that this is for bicycles, either road signs, sharrows on the lanes themselves, or something else that would begin to encourage bicyclists to use those streets and help the drivers who are in that area know that that's a place to expect bicyclists. Having what's called the potential bike lanes is a place where you'd have to actually stripe things, take away car lanes. That can be done really nicely in certain areas, what's called a road diet, which is when you take 4 lanes or 3 lanes and take one off of them, and then you have your dedicated bike paths on both sides. Silver Lake Boulevard is a great example of that. And everybody was up in arms when that was proposed, saying, I need to get through that with my car. People actually liked that it calmed the car traffic as well as, provided something for the bicycles. But I think that's going to be really important for people to chime in, because in San Francisco, when they went more aggressively towards paths that were dedicated bike paths with the lanes actually striped out, there was a challenge to them, and that put them behind 2 years because they had to do environmental impact reports. You had communities all chiming in overall what's the impact on cars. Whereas today, if we can just retrain people in the existing places and say this is where we want to direct bicycle traffic, I think we can be up and running this coming year. And 2010 can be the year of the bicycle in Los Angeles. I'd also love to see, and one thing that wasn't in the bike plan was ciclovia, which we saw in Colombia and other places where we do have some parts of the city we can close down on the weekends and just make them car-free and let people walk and bicycle on these. We have them kind of unofficially on all these, midnight rides and things like that. But to be able to do that in a dedicated way, do that during the daytime too, so it isn't just, those of us who are in our 20s and 30s who kind of are part of one particular bicycle community, but you have little kids and families and seniors. That really is going to transform, taking this from something that is growing in strength to a completely mainstream movement.
Okay.
So,
can I have Stephen
ask
you
sure,
more questions,
absolutely.
including what can, and you can sit here because I'm going to be right back.
Okay.
Including what can the average listener do, or any tips that you have,
sure.
Who they can get in touch with, where they can ride.
Okay, you got it.
So what can the average listener do?
Brilliant question. The average listener, there's probably 3 groups of people in Los Angeles. Those who are really avid cyclists who use the bicycle to get to work or who aggressively recreate with bicycles. There's the occasional cyclist, and then there's people who know how to ride a bike probably but haven't been on a bike in years and are scared to even get on one in Los Angeles. I think there's roles for all 3 classes of folks to play. For the activist bicyclist, you have the knowledge that the city needs to know. And the public comment period on the plan, which will be open till January, let us know in written form, send us a tape, come to any of the hearings, but give us that input so that we can show all the experience that people have. We can show that to our city planners in our Department of Transportation and say, here's some great things people loved, here's some things they didn't like, and here's some new ideas. For the occasional cyclist, I think it's important for those folks really to stand up and be heard too, because those are the people who could really be the difference between this being seen as a fringe issue and a majoritarian issue. And for me, I think, again, it gets back to what I was saying, that people are so good at saying what they're against. I've heard people complain about drivers, I've heard people complain about bicyclists. Instead of us figuring out how can we coexist and how do we do that in a really healthy way. So it's important to hear those public comments, but it's also important for us to publicize to the occasional rider great new things that are happening in the city. When a new street like Meyer Avenue opens up, or when we have a planning grant in my own district in East Hollywood, which is kind of the epicenter of bicycle activism, on Virgil Avenue, where we're going to be able to maybe do a road diet. We want those occasional cyclists to also be involved in the planning so that they feel like, hey, I did something that leads me to be more encouraged to be on a bike. For the person who's totally scared out there, I think it's incumbent upon all of us to talk to them. Talk to a neighbor. Talk to somebody who is a coworker and say, hey, have you ever thought about getting back on a bicycle, and what would it take? And I think for all of us, if we can be the messengers of letting people know we do have miles of dedicated bike lane, that is a great way to be healthy but also to get around, and then that there are a lot of changes that will be made in this next year or two, they can chime in and maybe be part of this transformation in the city. So.
Sounds like you've given it a lot of thought. If we'd be lucky if the majority of the city council was half as progressive as you, are there other city councilors who you find sharing your views, or who are there thoughts on how to get more of them to share your enthusiasm for biking?
I think we've reached a tipping point. This was much more of a fringe issue 10 years ago. It's kind of like the Los Angeles River. For a few of us, the revitalization of the Los Angeles River was something that was seen, peripheral. There's always a council member or two who are saying, but they were dreamers. Now it's difficult to get elected in the LA city if you're not for revitalizing Los Angeles River, and it's very much, no pun intended, seen as a mainstream issue. But we have, I think, similarly with bicycles now, people falling over themselves to be a bicycle leader in the council. I mean, I love it when we talk about this. We had a group of activists who came down after one of the accidents that happened downtown where there was a poor response from, they believed, the police department. And I think 7 or 8 different council members stood up and said, this is wrong. We're going to get to the bottom of this. And it was more than lip service. They followed up. They talked to LAPD. They've talked to the traffic division in the police department. They want to change the way courts look at bicycle accidents, not as just somebody falling, but potentially losing their life. And I've seen great motions and legislation introduced by Councilmember Rosendahl, Councilmember Reyes, Councilmember Smith. I've seen who else has been very active? Councilmember Gruhl, who's now our city controller, was very good on this issue. Councilmember Alarcon as well. So I think it's transcending neighborhoods, which is great. Which it means that bicyclists have allies around the city geographically, and in some ways, I think the City Council is more progressive right now than our Department of Transportation. We've got some great allies, but we've got a lot of people who are still kind of pushing paper, old engineering. Streets are for cars, bicycles are the afterthought. I really look forward to the Department of Transportation hiring increasingly in years to come those people who can implement for us and who know that bicycles are on equal footing as cars.
Yeah. There are some cities around the country that have been beginning to hire bicycle czars, very progressive ones.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
Well, we do have somebody who's kind of a bicycle czar, Michelle Maury, who's in the Department of Transportation. And, she was kind of by herself for all these years, putting together maps of where we could have bicycle lanes and where we could have dedicated bikeways. And I think finally she feels a lot less isolated. I'd like to see that position, though, empowered more than it is. It's still seen within the department and by the city as a specialty area. It's kind of like environmental work. The day we get to no longer having a green movement is the day that we've succeeded. When people just do energy conservation and build buildings the right way and conserve water because it's just mainstream, it's the thing that we're supposed to do. When we no longer have to have a bicycle czar, I think that's going to be a better day because it'll mean that we have a Department of Transportation that cares for people in the city no matter what mode of transport they have. And I think the passage of Measure R showed that people are willing to tax themselves for different ways of getting around. That people in Los Angeles don't want to just buy that single person in a single passenger car by themselves culture. It's not working. It's reached the limit. We need it to be one of the modes for all of us. I mean, there's no way around that. But it shouldn't be the only mode. And there's certainly been a lot of bad air, bad traffic, and bad decisions linked around that.
Shout-outs. Usually end with a shout-out.
I'd give a shout-out to the bicycle activists of East Hollywood. It is Bicycleville. And we're going to get those sharrows up on Fountain Avenue. It's going to be the first street in L.A., hopefully by the spring. Keep that activism, keep pushing. And I'd love to dedicate an area that is known as, some sort of bicycle or cycle area. But a shout-out to the heart of the activist community and to all our midnight riders as well.
Cool. And why do you ride a bicycle?
Ride a bicycle for my health, to get around, to reduce traffic, reduce pollution, and to see my city. Can't see it from a car, but you see it on a bike.
Cool. What kind of bike do you ride?
Mountain bike. I have a Trek mountain bike.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Gives me a little more exercise than a road bike. And with the potholes, you need it sometimes.
Another good point too.